library because you have lots of books that I like.
I remember Barbara Walsh and Jean Black. Well, it was, that's going back a long time. That's 60 and 50 years.
Our older son, Greg, worked as a page in the library, and he was 13, so it would have been 79, 72, 73. Yeah. And Suzanne West worked there also, and he went in one day, and Mom had said to Suzanne, "It's Lorna's birthday today." So when he went in, she said, "Greg, I hear it's your mom's birthday." And he said, "Yes." And she said, "Well, how old is she?" And she said he stopped, and he looked at her, and he said, "Well," he said, "she doesn't use oil of Olay yet."
I think the first time I walked through the doors, I had both my boys, Daniel and Marcus, and they were immediately drawn to the children's section. Even growing up in my hometown library, we haven't had a children's section that large. So that was really exciting.
I grew up in Carleton Place, so one of my earliest memories of coming to the library was when I was probably about 5 or 6 years old. And my mom would bring us to craft programs that happened. They used to take place in what is now the children's area, and that used to be the great big programming room. And I remember coming to do a decoupage program that lasted a couple of Saturdays, and it was so much fun. I didn't really know much about the history of the Carleton Place Public Library until I started working there. And there were several staff who were really interested in local history and just the library in general, so I would learn more that way.
I knew very little about the Carleton Place Library when I started. I did live in Pakenham at the time, but I had only really just moved there, so I wasn't too familiar with anything in the area yet. Of course, over the years, I've learned quite a bit, and our library, of course, is one of the oldest. It is the oldest in the area. It beat out the Ottawa Library by a couple of years.
In 1829, before the Carleton Place Library was established, the Ramsay and Lanark Circulation Library served the people of Carleton Place with its over 500 volumes. This library did not have a permanent location and was instead run by members of the community out of various locations, including people's houses. The Carleton Place Public Library's history officially began on March 14, 1846, as a subscription library under the name the Carleton Place Library and Mechanics Institute. Having been established 1 year prior to the founding of Ottawa's first library by the Bytown Mechanics Institute, the Carleton Place Library is considered to be one of the oldest in this part of Ontario. Mechanics institutes existed across Ontario at that time and were usually comprised of a board of local volunteer men who wished to pursue self-improvement through education. These institutes were community-based and often operated libraries, reading rooms, and offered lectures to their communities. The Mechanics Institute in Carleton Place wanted to establish their library in order to provide a cheap and well-assorted class of books accessible to all classes of the community. When they first opened, they only had 16 volumes, but that quickly increased to 144 by the end of the year, and by November 1850, their collection had grown to 363 volumes. Topics in the collection at that time included religion, historical, biographical, narrative, fictitious, general information, scientific, agricultural, voyages and travel, and miscellaneous. As a subscription library, members would have to pay an entrance fee, originally 2 shillings and 6 pence, in addition to an annual subscription of 5 shillings. However, the payment of 25 years subscription constituted a person a free member. The Mechanics Institute Board did not earn money, and therefore all of the library's funds all went back into the purchase and repair of books. The first official librarian was David Lawson, who was the head librarian from 1846 to 1851, at which time he resigned. Johnston Nielsen, a local schoolmaster, then took over the position from 1851 to 1887, during which time the library was moved to the schoolhouse on Bridge Street, which would later become the Central School and is now the current site of the Carleton Place Post Office. The library continued as a subscription library, housed either in empty buildings or people's homes into the 1880s. In the late 1890s, however, the library was converted into a subscription-free public library due to new provincial legislation and found a more permanent home in the newly built town hall. Before the library could officially move, however, they needed to raise some funds to support the move. To produce these funds, the library organized the Art Loan Exhibition. The Art Loan Exhibition was an exhibit of Lanark and Renfrew's social and natural history, which was made up of relics, mementos of important events in the early history of the county, and curios of any description loaned by the community. The exhibition took place both day and night at the Carleton Place Opera Hall from February 17th to 22nd, 1896, and featured a musical program each evening. The cost of admission was 15 cents for adults, 10 cents for children, or you could gain access for the entire week for just 50 cents. The exhibition was deemed a success after it closed in late February 1896. The event brought in roughly $400, and the local newspaper detailed that even had the library not benefited financially from the exhibition, the educational effect in the community was of inestimable value, since the exhibition made these artifacts and documents about local history accessible to the general public, who may not normally have had access to this kind of education. The local newspaper also included a detailed list of all the pieces that were loaned to the exhibition. The list took up 3 columns in the February 25th edition of the paper, and then continued for 6 more the following week in the March 3rd edition, and even then it did not include every item loaned. Some of the items included the straw splitter, which was used to split lengths of straw into thin strips to be used to make braided straw hats, and this skirt lifter, loaned by Mrs. James Gillies, which was used to hold up a dress train. The library settled into its new home in the town hall in 1898, and thanks to the funds raised at the Art Loan Exhibition and the funding from the provincial government, it could operate as a public library, housing 2,418 volumes. In the early history of the town hall library, the reading room was reserved for men only, and women and children could not enter the large library doors. Even after Emma McRosty, the first woman with the position, took over as head librarian, this rule was still in place. According to the rememberings of Jennifer Miller, daughter of Trixie Mayhew, a former assistant librarian, there was a time when children could not pick out their own books at all. Instead, they would walk up to a set of doors where the librarian's desk was located and would be given a book chosen for them by the librarian. Later, the reading room was converted into a large collection room that was open to all. Children could now choose their own books, but there was a limit on how many books they could take out at one time.
At the circulation desk, some of our more senior patrons will come in and talk about how they remember getting library service over at the town hall with Barbara Walsh and the stories they'll tell. So I've learned quite a bit.
We started going there when Miss Elliott was the librarian, and that would be in the 50s. It was always very impressive just walking in the doors, because the doors are still there. Wood and glass library, I think it says, I'm not sure, I haven't been there for years. And that was always impressive, and then you walked in and always it was a door open this way. And you walked in and there was Miss Elliott mounted there at her post. And, but there was reading tables, and of course the books all the way along, 2 rows at the back, and then there was a reference library at the back of another room.
And I think one of the things too was the quiet, because now when you go to the library, you can hear people talking and whatever, but there it was absolute silence and don't speak. And occasionally you could hear things through the police door, you could, I suppose people sidled up to it to listen, I don't know.
But it was not musty, but it It's always smelled so neat.
Yeah, bookish.
Yes, bookish, yes.
Yeah, I think that's what I remember too, is the smell. And the desk, of course, was wooden, but it was quite high, like
Yeah.
another level
Yes.
higher than that. You couldn't put your hands up. And the reference room, children were never, no, you can't go in there.
In 1956, the town hosted an anniversary event in honor of the 110th anniversary of the library. The event spanned over 2 days. On the Thursday night, a group of local children put on the play The Marvelous Story of Puss in Boots by Nicholas Stewart Gray. The children practiced through the summer and were overseen by the library board and other volunteers. The library board members and volunteers also prepared the stage in the town hall and created a set for the play. Friday night included the presentation of a birthday cake and exhibits of old library records, manuscripts, maps, and photos of Carleton Place and the library through the years. Many of the exhibit pieces were donated by local historian Howard Morton Brown and the Public Archives in Ottawa for the event. While the library was a subscription library through the Mechanics Institute, David Lawson and Johnston Nielsen were both head librarians. In addition to his duties as librarian, Lawson was a store clerk and postmaster at the local post office. He was the head librarian from 1846 to 1851, at which time he resigned due to an increase in his duties at the post office, but stayed on the Mechanics Institute board as the secretary. Nielsen, a local schoolmaster, then took over the position from 1851 to 1887, which was also when the library moved to the Central School on Bridge Street. After Nielsen, Peter McRosty took over the position. Mr. McRosty was a former farmer and served as the head librarian from 1887 to 1909, seeing the library through from a subscription library to a free public library. According to a census from 1901, Mr. McRosty's salary was roughly $300 per year. Before he retired in 1909, Peter McRosty trained his daughter Emma McRosty, who would take over for him after his retirement. He died just 1 year after his retirement due to an injury during a fall at the age of 78. After Emma McRosty took over the position, she was head librarian at the Town Hall Library from 1909 to 1941, and according to a 1911 census, she earned a salary of $200 a year and worked roughly 36 hours a week. She later went on to earn up to $380 a year by 1932, according to an annual report from that year. Emma McRosty died of hypostatic pneumonia in December of 1942, just 1 year after her own retirement. Louise Elliott was appointed head librarian in 1941 after Emma McRosty retired. Elliott was said to have taken a special pride in the library, for she saw in its shelves evidence that a high standard was set in the beginning in collecting its volumes. She retired in 1960, just before marrying her husband, Reverend Weegar. She died in 1986 at the age of 90. After Elliott's retirement in 1960, Barbara Walsh became head librarian and remained until 1984, 14 years after the move to the current Beckwith Street location.
She and Trixie both worked here when Miss Elliott was there, and then they, I guess they offered the job to Mom, or whatever. I have no recollection of how she got it.
We were quite proud of her.
Yeah.
You know, that she was the boss.
Yeah,
At least in the library.
Yeah. No, it wasn't ever embarrassing. It was kind of neat because they had she had her friends there, you know, that and Trixie and others.
Yes. People all still say to me, "Oh, your mother was librarian." Oh, yes, I remember her.
As librarian, she was involved in Learn to Read programs at local schools. She also volunteered in many other groups and organizations in town, both before and after she retired. She served on the Municipal Council for 6 years and was awarded Citizen of the Year in 1993 and Senior of the Year in 1994. The Barbara Walsh Programming Room at the library is dedicated to her and the impact that she had on the Carleton Place Library and the community it serves. Janet Barrow became head librarian after Walsh's retirement in 1984. Janet was the head librarian during the 1986 fire, the 160th anniversary of the library, and the 1999 to 2000 renovations.
I was in charge of basically all aspects of the library. I had studied in a library tech program at Lakehead University. I then went on to do a degree, a BA, and at the end of my BA I actually went to Germany and was a librarian in a high school for the forces in Baden-Baden for 4 years. And then when I came home, of course I didn't have a position, so a position opened up in Gloucester, Ontario, and I became a children's librarian in Gloucester prior to coming here.
She retired in 2013, and in honor of her retirement, the library hosted a tea on November 1st, 2013 to give the public the opportunity to say goodbye. In 2013, Mariah Caswell, the current head librarian and library CEO, joined the Carleton Place Library.
I began working at the library in the fall of 2013. We had this excellent moment where the previous librarian, Janet, she was retiring, but I got about a month of overlap with her, which is great because she was absolutely wonderful at her job, and she was able to show me the ropes and show me how things were organized and how things worked. Every library does things a little differently, and she was able to show me how things work at our library. I'll never get this wish, but I would love to just sit down with Barbara Walsh or some of my predecessor librarians and talk about what was the everyday like for them, because I know for the everyday between my job and what Janet did, it must be quite different. Changes in technology and changes in the community, and what was everyone's job like, back in 1920.
And everything was yeah,
Silence.
Yeah, she was so particular about keeping everybody quiet.
And she was never as diligent, let's say, as Miss Elliott.
No.
In keeping silence.
More relaxed.
Yeah.
It wasn't noisy, but it was noisier than it had been.
Yeah, you could carry on a conversation.
Yeah.
A quiet conversation. Yeah. Like, please don't be shouting, because then you're disrupting others. But she was very much more relaxed than Miss Elliott.
I think I curtailed that right from the beginning. Oh. To bring a child into a library, it's not fair to say shh, shh, shh. You should try to make that place just such an important place for a child. And I mean, we don't want bad behavior, but yeah, to just be chatting to your mom or your little friend, or, in moderation, everything is fine.
Currently, we're in the station. We only have a fraction of our collection right now, a tiny fraction. Normally we have about 40,000 items in our collection, and we're down to about 6,000 circulating items. So circulation right now is not as robust as it normally would be, just because we don't have the same kind of kind of space and stuff available to our community. Pre-pandemic, we were at about 130,000 items a year, and that includes digital items. And I do know, so pre-pandemic, digital stuff, ebooks and audiobooks, they accounted for just under 20% of our total circulation, and now they are about 40% of our entire circulation. So they have really borne the brunt of what people have been consuming from our library in the last couple of months, which is no surprise since our library has been for a lot of the time been closed to the public.
And so I saw it develop through my years from being a card-based library where you looked up things in a card catalog, etc., to an online automated system. Our automated system that we first got, I even traveled around Ontario to see other people's automated systems before we chose ours.
I have to tell you that one of the silliest changes, but one of the most important changes, was air conditioning, because this library when I first came here in '73, there was no air conditioning, and you just nearly died every time you came for a visit. But the minute that computers were brought in, they had to have air conditioning, not for the people, but for the computers. So it started with that, but then just everything, the programming, the addition of DVDs, the computers for the public. That's a huge thing. So every little step is all the better.
When I first started, we did have computers, but we were still kind of using the cards, and it was definitely dated. Now we have a new library program. We're doing all kinds of amazing things with technology, and it's growing. But I loved that transition, and I think that it made things so much easier. And as the days go on, we definitely find more and more uses for technology in our libraries.
This year, Caroline, she secured a grant of $20,000 to purchase iPads and hotspots, which she arranged a program to deliver them to local retirement homes in order to fight social isolation for people living in those residences during the pandemic. It's something I'm not sure a lot of people in our community are aware of, but I'm sure it's meant a lot to the residents of those homes who now have a little bit more options for connecting to their families and friends during the pandemic.
I loved our reopenings. Yes. Whenever we had those. We seemed to have them all the time.
In 1970, the library moved out of the town hall and into their current location on Beckwith Street. This land was the former site of Mrs. James Gillies' home, which was destroyed during a large fire in 1910. Afterwards, the land was willed to the town by Mrs. Gillies under the stipulation that it be maintained for public use. Because of this, the land has been the site of the former Carleton Place Arena, the library, Memorial Park, and is home to the IODE fountain base. The new library building cost about $8,500. Most of these funds were provided by residents, but they were supplemented by the Eastern Ontario Regional Library System. When they officially opened the new building, there was a ceremony which included speeches by the mayor at the time, J.A. Julian, a representative of the Eastern Ontario Regional Library Association, and the chairman of the library board, Maurice Price. It also included a ribbon cutting performed by Barbara Walsh and Debbie Howard, an inspection of the building, and refreshments. The building was 4 times larger than the town hall library had been, and included a relaxed reading area, a children's section with a living room setting, and stacks for 14,000 books. Just 8 years later, however, the library continued to grow and required more space. At this time, the library underwent an expansion, becoming twice its previous size.
Events, of course, we did have a library fire in 1986. I remember the phone call in the morning telling me it had happened, and I remember in my head, I never thought of vandalism. My first thought was, I didn't store my cleaning supplies properly. That was my first thought. But then, of course, I was told very quickly that somebody had been in the building and that it had been vandalized. And of course, because it was vandalism, I wasn't allowed to go in the building for 3 or 4 days after, because their investigation was going on. And when I went in, it was a bit of a shock. It was,
Right.
yeah, but I was very thankful that our whole building wasn't gone. One end was smoke damaged, but there was no problem caused by flame. The fiction area, you could stand in and see the sky. I can still remember that.
And then, of course, then after when it burned, she was so upset. She was just beside herself. She wasn't working there then, but she was working as a counselor.
I was in high school when the fire happened at the library in 1986. And I remember it being such a traumatic moment. And it was somewhere around that time as well that Chernobyl had its big accident. But the library fire to me overshadowed Chernobyl because it hit me on a different level. It was definitely something that was more direct in my life.
We had a wonderful construction company that rebuilt us. And I don't know if you remember the art wall with the skylight windows.
Yep.
Well, that's a bit of a very expensive building area. And the insurance company thought, well, we don't need to be doing it. And I said, no, I want it back just the way it was, because they didn't want to do that because that was expensive. Well, it's what we had before, so it's what we're entitled to have. And we did open a satellite library up in the Mews, where on the corner where there is an accountant's office, I believe now. We were open at 9 every morning, and we just had tables, and we had books that were being returned to us. And we still proceeded to buy new books during that time frame. So, and there was a lot of back and forth with me going back and forth to the building, to the construction people would want to ask me something or do something. I worked in Smith Falls every Tuesday for several months, having the collection rebound, or so I was the one in Smith Falls saying, yes, do this one, don't do that one, etc., and filling out insurance papers to help along the way. The community was wonderful. The community so supported me and gave in all kinds of ways, so it was great.
Many local organizations, groups, other libraries, and individual residents sent the Carleton Place Public Library donations to help them reestablish and to help cover the cost of the fire and the loss to their collection, and helped the library recommence circulation on Beckwith Street only 6 months after the fire.
Well, the one that stands out to me the most is the renovation that I went through, because I ended up in the emergency room. That was memorable to me.
Renovation again, we had another good company. The parking lot got redone that time, which was good because it was a disaster waiting to happen. The office up front, yes, and we moved the fiction back. Yeah, it was just good. Well, that was one of my things, was the children had such a small area prior to the fire. It just wasn't fair. And that program room was not being used very often. So I just had the children's area, move all back there, and then we built on a smaller program room.
Exactly.
Which certainly served the purpose. One of the guys in the architect's office designed that door.
Oh,
and
really?
came to me and said, "What do you think of this door?" And I said, "I love it if it'll stand up." And he said, "Oh yeah, it'll stand up."
In 2012, we won second place in the TD Summer Reading Club Awards, which was so fantastic. It was so fun to be acknowledged as having a great summer reading program. Being from a small town, you think that the larger libraries are the ones that are doing more things and getting recognized for them. So it was really great. And it was fun because I got to go to Winnipeg that year and attend a library conference there that I never would have had the chance to do before and meet other people. So that was quite nice.
I will let Heidi talk about the summer reading program because it is wholly her achievement and one she should be just so proud of. She worked really hard and she earned it. So I'll let her talk about the details. But I know Heidi, and I know she's going to be incredibly modest about it. So I want everyone to know for posterity just how hard we know that she worked for this award and what a coup it was for our little tiny small town library to have definitively the best summer reading program in the country. And what a feather in our cap it was, and just how proud we are of Heidi and her accomplishment.
And then in 2018, we won the grand prize in the TD Summer Reading Club, which was amazing. It was my ultimate goal, and it required a lot of work, a lot of planning, documentation, and a huge essay, a lot of statistics, and we sent it in, and they liked what we had done that year. It was innovative and, as we try to be every year, creative. So that was fun, and it was very exciting because I got to go to Newfoundland to receive the award and again attend another library conference and see other libraries in other parts of the country and how they do things. So that was amazing. And in 2016, we also won the Angus Mowat Award for Excellence, and it was for one of our writing programs. We had a pretty good writing group for a number of years. It's stopped recently, but we may get going again. And we did all kinds of writing workshops and things that year. So we won a wonderful award for that, and that was an amazing night. It was very super, very unexpected.
I guess there's all these everyday victories to the pandemic. I can't say, and the move, how hard this has been for our staff. Just every day is either huge changes or waiting to find out information, or just dealing with not having the same kind of resources available. And every day everyone comes in, they're nice to each other, they're supportive of each other, and even more, they're offering fantastic service to the people who come to the library, smiling and going at the extra mile to make sure that people get the information that they need. Those are small everyday victories, and being coming up with creative ideas for how they can better serve the people who come in. Those are I would say some of the achievements that we've had recently. It has been a real challenge. It's had its emotional highs and lows. It's been even more challenging for our library than some because, of course, we're in the middle of a big move. Last year, our library is lovely, of course, but it was in need of a refresh. So moving our collection into storage, deciding what needed to go to storage and what needed to come with us to the station, moving out 40,000 items and learning how to do it. I mean, it's not like a house move. You can't just pack it up and ship it and store it and then you're good. They're in a very specific order. And you have to pack them up in such a way that they will stay in that order, and when you bring them back, they're going to be in that order and easy for your volunteers to reshelve them. And that is no small feat. That it was so much logistics and figuring out, okay, well, what size of boxes that we need and how we're going to move them, and if it involves lift trucks or dollies or pallets, and where do you store them, and what order do you store them in? All of these things need to be decided. And the move day came, and we had, and of course we were doing this all in a pandemic too, so we're wondering what kind of labor can we have in a room at one time. It was just a logistical nightmare, and the move weekend came, and so we had so many volunteers come in who they were just donating their time and their efforts, and they were just so happy to be there, and they worked so hard, and it was just so beautiful to see everyone donating their time to their community library. It was the most challenging thing I've ever done so far in my career, and definitely the most rewarding. And we spent the majority of the pandemic at the station. We've been very lucky to be here, very lucky, but it has involved a lot more challenges than perhaps some of our other community libraries have faced.
It was also really hard because our staff was very separated. While we had meetings, it was still virtual, and it wasn't quite as regular. I didn't get to see everyone every day, especially at the beginning of the pandemic when we were working from home and some of the staff had been laid off, which was really hard. So it was very disjointed for a long time.
I started working at the library in September 2020. So I was hired during the pandemic and right before the move. It's definitely had a lot of challenges, ups and downs, but I think it's been really exciting when it opens back up to the public.
This last few months, maybe 7 or 8 months, when we've been here at the station, it's been nicer because we've been able to see our staff every day, even if we're not all working in the same building at the same time.
At the beginning of the pandemic, it was a really difficult time because libraries are supposed to be open and there for their communities during times of strife. That's what libraries are. They're there for their community. They're this quiet force for stability. And then at the beginning, we had to close our doors, and so it felt so antithetical to how libraries are supposed to operate, and it felt like a failure. Now, of course, we did the right thing. We would have done more harm to our community being open during not that we had a choice, but no regrets. We should have closed, and we did. But at the same time, it felt like we were doing an injustice to our community being a library. Now, of course, that's all very sad, but I can't say enough about how much the staff stepped up and started trying new things and experimenting, and it's been a joy to really watch everyone kind of grow and learn how to operate virtually.
It's taught me a lot in my own professional development and stuff about how you can create engaging programs for kids in different ways. I found a lot of really valuable experiences based on having to do things online, or how to make a Zoom call engaging for children, or for teens, or things like that. Last summer, it was really different. I was just recording videos. And this summer, we've kind of incorporated more in-person story times, in the park. And I just realized, it's really taught me how important it is to interact with other people and get that, feedback.
And so it forced us to be really creative, to think outside the box. And I think with the pandemic, this was my most creative year. I had almost hit a point in my career where I was getting tired of the things I was doing, and they were becoming kind of monotonous. Even though I would run different types of programs, it wasn't as much of a challenge anymore. But the pandemic changed everything, turned everything upside down, and made me rethink how to deliver programs. And not only that, but how we could make programming even better using a technological aspect. And that's another thing. I learned a lot about technology this year that I didn't really think I was ever going to learn. And it was so much fun. And I know I'll carry a lot of this over into what I start doing from this point forward.
But just wonderful people in all my years in all aspects of the library. I always had wonderful support.
Every time I would go into the library, the people that I would meet at the desk, the people that worked there, the wonderful women that worked there would greet me by name. Having grown up in a small town and coming to Carleton Place, it just made me feel like I was part of the community. So I think for me, having that sense of community continues to be really important. So that's my favorite memory.
The other day, you know, I helped a young man make a resume who didn't have a computer and got to have those printed off for him, or, you know, connected a little girl to a book about mythology that she was so excited about. And patrons, when they come back in after lockdown, saying that they're just so happy to be back in their favorite place.
It's just a place to go and be surrounded by wonderful people and all the books you could ever want.
I remember when I was really young, my mom used to take me and my sister to do the story. I guess there were story times with Linda in the Barbara Welsh room. That was probably one of my earliest memories. I also remember when I was in elementary school, Heidi coming to the library at Arkland and talking about the summer reading program, and also what were they called? The Silver Birch, the Forest of Reading programs as well.
Things. I was happy every day I came to work. I can't imagine people going to work not happy.
Spreading of knowledge, you know. I think so many things are kind of, especially reading, kind of get lost in translation these days. And you know, I think, how do I put it? Well, I can speak for myself. It's a universe away from what you're living right now. It's learning from a different world, from somebody's perspective. You know, it's empathy. It's great storytelling. You're learning just anything and everything. It's an escape.
I love it. Libraries were created in the beginning because there was haves and have-nots. And by creating libraries, everybody could partake of a library. Mm-hmm. And I think that's still important today. Mm-hmm. Even if you could afford to go to the library, there would be people that couldn't afford to go to the library. And I just think it's important that it is totally accessible to all. And the technology libraries offer now and the worlds they open up, even to people that maybe can't afford technology, well, just go to the library. Mm-hmm. You know, you still have access. People don't realize there is a sector of our population that maybe can't afford, don't ever have never had the opportunity to use, or, you know, the computers, so they need help in using the computers. And even things like, I've seen people in there downloading boarding passes. Mm-hmm. Well, those people probably don't have a computer at home, but they're maybe going to visit their grandchildren in Vancouver, mm-hmm. and they need that boarding pass printed. Mm-hmm. So, you know, it's for all different aspects, Kate.
Well, I think libraries are important in so many different ways. They're one of the last places you can be for free. You don't have to pay anything to be there. They connect people to the community, to each other, and most importantly to knowledge, things they're interested in, access to computers, and connect people to stories and novels, which are fantastic entertainment, but I think they teach us so much about what it means to be ourselves, to be human in a way.
Yes. Well, I certainly do. I think that there's nothing like reading a book or having a book. Everybody can look it up on the internet. but to have a book. Okay.
That's what our grandfather said.
Our grandfather always said a book.
He was English, so. Yeah, I fully agree with that because I much enjoy holding a book because you can stop any place you want and it's always right exactly there.
Yeah.
You don't have to call it back up by name and then sort your way through where you were.
Yeah.
It's so a lot more comforting just to be able to hold a book. And books aren't as important, I guess, as they used to be to some people, but people like us, yes, they are. And so for that reason, I'd say yes.
Because it's access to information that I would otherwise not have at the time that I want it, and not when I can get it through media.
I think that as an avid reader, as somebody who tried to instill the love of reading in my children, and I continue to seek those opportunities for myself and others. I think the library is a gathering place. It's a place to instill those values in your children as they're growing up, to have that sense of community, to be able to explore, new types of reading materials that you wouldn't normally have sought out yourself. And of course, the libraries now are multidisciplinary. They have different types of media available. They have computer for the public to use. There's educational programming, so there's so many different aspects that continue to evolve as our community and needs evolve. So I think it's really important that the library is part of our community, and that it changes as the needs of the clients change.
It's an escape for people. It's also a connector for people, so you can kind of find programs. It's not just about the books, it's about the community outreach that we do, and it's a safe place. I think libraries have always been safe places, and I think they'll continue to be safe places. And I know it was always like a safe place for me and stuff, so I think just the fact that it's a safe place to go.
Something that I really love about the Carleton Place Library, and really just libraries everywhere, is that it's one of the only places left that you can go and be accepted and not be bothered, and there's never any expectation that you have to spend money.
I believe that the library, well, I'll say this. A lot of people believe that the community center, the sports arena, whatever, that's the heart of a town. And I'm not going to say yay or nay to that, but I believe that the library is the soul of the town.
So you're looking forward to us moving back?
Oh, definitely, definitely, yes.
Wow, you can really dance. Wow, you can really dance. He went. They said we've both been dancing all this time. What a coincidence.
Do you really want to know?
Yes. What are you excited about?
The carpeting.
I just hope it continues to serve the community as well as it has through the years. It's always been an open door. It's always been accessible to all, and I hope that continues. And I hope we continue to move forward. Technology is not going to stop, and even things that are present now are becoming obsolete, like CDs. I mean, little simple things. But I just hope we continue to move forward and continue to have the support of our community.
Well, I hope that this library, this public library, always remembers that the people are the they rely on this library. There's a lot of people that don't have the financial, physical resources to use, and the fact that they can benefit from all the library resources, I hope we never lose that.
Hopes and dreams are to continue with your programs. You reach the kids early with books, and then they're hooked. Because I know we had some books, but the library was our main source at the time.
I'd like to see the Carleton Place Library evolve to meet the needs of their clients, but still maintaining the core sort of values of a library, the books that you can hold in your hands, but still offering alternative opportunities for online reading, etc. Building the educational programming, which is so valuable, and not forgetting about those new patrons and the loyal patrons, and continuing to greet them by name and to encourage that sense of community for our new members of our town as the town grows.
That I can work there? Can I say that?
Yeah,
I'd love
absolutely.
to work here. I will be applying later today.
Honestly, I just can't wait till we're back in the renovated building. Having just seen it, it's so beautiful, and I think the community is going to really love it, and I hope it feels that it reflects them and what they want for the library's future.
Well, thank you.